Hi everybody, I'm Adam R. Jacobson, and this is the Radio and Television Business Report InFOCUS video podcast coming to you live from Washington, D.C. It's been a heck of a week, and I just came from a Senate Commerce Committee hearing in which Senator Ted Cruz, Maria Cantwell, and a whole bunch of members of the Senate Commerce Committee talked about the possibility of changing the 39% national television ownership cap. For more on that, we'll go to the National Association of Broadcasters, as Chairman CEO Curtis Legit was at the hearing as a witness, along with Chris Ruddy from Boca Raton, Florida-based Newsmax, along with a former FCC general counsel and someone advocating for the future of local newsrooms. And we'll have more on that in just a few seconds.
When the FCC first imposed national and local television ownership limits, Franklin Roosevelt was president. Now, 9 decades later, those same rules still prevent broadcasters, and broadcasters alone, from owning more than 2 stations in any local market and from reaching more than 39% of American television households. These outdated regulations distort today's video and advertising marketplace. They advantage giant tech platforms, global streaming services, pay TV providers, and national cable programmers while placing local broadcasters at a severe disadvantage. In a digital media marketplace dominated by Google, YouTube, Netflix, Amazon, Apple, Meta, and TikTok, ownership restrictions that apply only to broadcasters are no longer rational or sustainable. They prevent broadcasters from achieving the scale necessary to compete for audience, programming, advertising revenues, and investment capital. As a result, your local stations remain hobbled by rules designed for the analog era, rules that directly undermine broadcasters' ability to provide our essential public service that remains free and universally accessible to all viewers. During recent crippling winter storms across vast swaths of the country, and during devastating floods in both Texas and Washington state, it was local broadcasters, not global streamers or national pay TV channels, that remained on the ground and on the air in those communities, providing life-saving information to their viewers. And beyond times of emergency, broadcasters are delivering the fact-based, most trusted journalism that keeps your constituents and communities informed and connected. Unfortunately, this local journalism is facing growing financial pressure. Fewer than half of television stations now report that their local news operations are profitable. Facing ever-rising news production costs and declining ad revenues, some broadcasters are simply unable to continue maintaining their own separate news operations. Without modernizing these ownership rules, local television news, the last bastion of truly local journalism in many communities, will suffer the same fate as thousands of local newspapers. Some argue that allowing broadcasters to achieve greater scale would reduce local news. The data shows just the opposite. Over the past decade, as broadcasters gained modest additional scale, the number of local news telecasts and hours of locally produced news increased substantially. From 2011 to 2023, local news telecasts increased by more than 40%, and total hours of local news grew nearly 50%. Scale allows broadcasters to invest more heavily in journalism, not less, but it's not enough. Outdated rules also limit broadcasters' ability to provide viewers access to marquee sports and entertainment. Instead of subscribing to a news streaming service every time they want to watch a game, viewers overwhelmingly prefer to watch sports on broadcast television. However, keeping broadcasters artificially small makes it harder to compete for increasingly expensive sports rights against our unregulated streaming rivals. Broadcasting share of viewership is already less than half our streaming competitors, and this decline will continue as premium sports content further migrates behind streaming paywalls.
With NAB President and CEO Curtis Legit defending the reasons why the 39% national ownership reach cap should be eliminated or tweaked, this individual, Chris Ruddy, CEO of Newsmax, took a very, very different stance. Let's see what he had to say in his prepared testimony, in which he believes, well, there should be no changes whatsoever to local ownership rules.
Our success is remarkable because the regulatory framework of the FCC favors media conglomerates and effectively blocks independent voices, both from the right and the left. There are 50 top cable channels in America. Newsmax is the only one operated by an independent media company. Every other channel is owned or created by a conglomerate. Newsmax's success proves the system is broken, and that this poses risks to competition, consumers, and even our democracy. We need more independent media. We need more competition, not less. Newsmax does not hold any broadcast licenses, but we are directly affected by TV consolidation. Large station groups hold enormous leverage over pay TV operators through retransmission fees, better known as retrans fees. These station groups can dictate prices and even determine what networks cable operators must carry. Nexstar provides a clear example. It owns about 200 stations today, many ABC, CBS, and NBC affiliated ones. If cable operators want to carry those stations, they have to pay Nexstar very high retrans fees. If they refuse, Nexstar can pull the plug, go dark, leaving viewers without the programming. Nexstar also insists that operators carry its cable channel, News Nation. Last year, Newsmax delivered 5 times the rating of News Nation, yet operators were forced not only to carry News Nation, but to pay license fees higher than that paid to Newsmax. Clearly, Nexstar's market leverage, you talked to Senator Cantwell about the 80% reach they have, suppresses competition and harms consumers. The national television ownership cap was meant to protect against such abuses. In '96, Congress established this cap into law, and later the cap was moved up to 39%. Only Congress may change the cap. Nevertheless, the FCC subverted the law by using the so-called UHF discount. Today, UHF stations reach 100% of households, and no discount should be applied. Yet Nexstar used the discount to acquire Tribune and expand its national reach to 70% of U.S. households a few years ago, way above the 39% cap. They're not satisfied with that, and now they want 80% reach. And the industry, broadcast industry, wants to replicate Nexstar's model in the pursuit of power and money.
In the words of Ranking Member Maria Cantwell, the Democratic senator from the state of Washington, as the media landscape has become fragmented every year, those shared experiences are becoming rarer. And that's one reason why she is, quote, here to fight for local journalism. And one of the reasons why Stephen Waldman, president of Rebuild Local News, was brought on as a witness alongside Curtis Legit and Chris Reddy, who you just saw. Also brought on as a witness is former FCC General Counsel Thomas Johnson, partner and co-chair of Issues and Appeals at Wiley Ryan LLP. Why was Mr. Waldman in attendance? Well, let's hear a little bit of what he had to share in his prepared testimony.
In the last 20 years, there's been a 75% drop in the number of local journalists. That's in print, TV, digital. And the consequences for communities are really alarming. Studies show that areas with less local news have more corruption, more government waste, less civic involvement, less volunteering. People know a lot about national controversies, but not all that much about local issues, what the mayor did this year, or even what the mayor's name was. And there's one more thing that's a bit harder to measure, but so important, is the vacuum is being filled by social media and national news, which are leaving communities more divided. As Senator Moran said last week about the Plainville Times, national journalism has the habit of tearing us apart. Community journalism pulls us together. Yes, media consolidation is one of the causes. For instance, private equity firms in New York acquired lots of newspapers, then laid off the local reporters in the rest of the country. But the primary cause is the internet. Advertisers shifted spending toward Google, Facebook, and other tech platforms, and then used their market clout to restrict competition and provide less revenue to local publishers. And now comes another body blow: artificial intelligence. AI will further deplete the revenue of local news outlets. AI companies will suck in the local news content to train and ground the AI assistants, which then provide full answers instead of linking prominently off to the publisher websites. And those click-throughs are what have generated the traffic and the revenue for the local news outlets. When the Washington Post announced its cuts, which included a 70% cut in the Metro staff, they noted that their search traffic had dropped by half in 3 years. And by the way, these drops in traffic are at conservative websites as well. But here's the horrible paradox of all this. As AI erodes local news businesses, that hollowness in turn will make it worse, will make AI worse. AI works well when it has massive amounts of data, but it really struggles when it's confronted with the condition called information scarcity, and local news suffers from that ailment exactly. Studies show AI routinely provides inaccurate information on local matters, and when malicious players are producing deep fakes and there are no local watchdogs, those will run rampant. And to be clear, like, AI does offer tremendous opportunities to local newsrooms. It really does. I mean, these nearly magical tools can help local news outlets do more coverage with less money. But the tech industry has to go farther than that and help reverse the financial crisis, the revenue crisis that it helped to create. And I think there's a few ways to think about that. First, AI companies must compensate local news organizations, including the small and medium-sized ones, for the content they use. Many of them have made deals with big media chains, but so far have left out thousands of smaller players. Second, we have the big controversies and energy over the construction of AI data centers. Well, there's an opportunity there too. Here's an idea. Have each data center contribute some money, a one-time donation to a community foundation to create an endowment that would help pay for local reporters. And those reporters can do the follow-up. Did the AI companies actually buy from local businesses, as they said they would, or hire locally, or did they pay their way on electricity, as they said? And finally, AI companies and social media platforms should pay, I believe, a mitigation fee to help finance the revival of community news. Even a tiny fee could help pay for something like Senator Cantwell's bill that would provide tax credits for the hiring of local news, or tax credits for small businesses that advertise in local news, which is an idea we're seeing Republicans push in New Hampshire and Kansas right now. Now, on the local TV ownership caps, our group has not taken a position on the question of whether or not FCC has the authority to do the caps on their own, but I would say this. First, I actually have some sympathy for both of these arguments. It really is true that local TV news is incredibly important. In some places, it's the only thing left. And so we really agree that this ought to be looked at through the prism of whether or not it helps local news. On the other hand, there really is a lot of evidence that consolidation has gone in the other direction and actually hollowed out some newsrooms. So my advice would be to look at that question through the prism of whether it's good or bad for local news, and specifically look at whether it maintains or increases or reduces the number of local reporters and editors, not the number of hours. Because if you have less local reporters and more hours, what you actually have is more superficial local news or more copying. So really look at the kind of capacity. And I think time is running out. We need to reverse this before nothing's left. We, at heart, need more human reporters living in the communities, accountable to and listening to their neighbors.
With that intriguing take on the local ownership rules for broadcast television, the conversation went on for roughly 2 hours. Before we conclude, we thought we would give the final word to Senator Ben Ray Lujan, the Democrat from New Mexico, who had questions for Mr. Ruddy.
Mr. Ruddy, when Chair Carr appeared before this committee, I asked if the Federal Communication Commission was an independent agency, and he responded, quote, "It is not formally independent." Now, frankly, his answer isn't surprising given his willingness to do the president's bidding, I would say. As a matter of fact, the FCC's website stated that it was an independent agency until I asked him the question. And while I thought Chairman Carr was the decision maker at the FCC, clearly he's not, because someone that was over there, they changed the website. That aside, a few days ago, the president posted on Truth Social regarding the Nexstar Tegna proposed merger, quote, "Get that deal done." And Chairman Carr responded on X, quote, "President Trump is exactly right. The national networks like Comcast and Disney have amassed too much power. For years, they've been pushing this Hollywood and New York programming all over the country with no real checks. Let's get it done and bring real competition to them." Now, my question is, are you concerned about Chair Carr's willingness to rubber stamp this merger? And let me just go on to say that I certainly agree that I think in your filed testimony that Congress is the one that's established the 39% threshold here. But my question is, are you concerned about Chair Carr's willingness to rubber stamp this merger?
Well, you make a lot of good points. I do believe it's an independent agency, and even as an independent agency, they should be listening to the president, members of Congress, and others, and they certainly should take that into account in their decision making. He is not alone at the commission. As you know, there's another member, and hopefully there'll be another Democratic member soon, and another Republican member. I think Chairman Carr has not given the president good advice. I mean, on the face of it, he says that he wants to increase competition by allowing massive consolidation. So we move from 7 TV companies to 2 or 3. How does that increase competition? The purpose of competition and deregulation is to lower prices. But what we're seeing is when you, in a closed market, there's only 4 major licenses in every market, that they increase prices because they have so much market dominance and power. It makes common sense. I believe that the chairman has been inconsistent. For example, I think he was right to criticize Jimmy Kimmel. I don't believe in the censorship on Jimmy Kimmel, but I think that, he'll say that I'm involved in this. He's calling for him to be fired because he says it's in the public interest. These are public licenses. But at the same time, he's saying the public interest doesn't matter. We should just allow 3 or 4 companies to own all the licenses. I think there should be a consistency. I think he should encourage all of these major networks that when it comes to politicized comedians, they should show balance. And I think it's unfair that we've had several that have just bashed President Trump for the past 15 years without response. But I think the answer, again, is not censorship, and it's a balanced interest for the public interest. That's what these licenses are all about. And I think the merger of Nexstar has already proven it's bad for consumers. The prices have gone up, passed on to cable fees. It's led to the decimation of newsrooms in markets where they own more than 2 stations. Before they did the merger with Tribune back a few years ago, they had 16,000 employees. Within 1 year, they went down to 12,000 employees. If you're a journalist working for Nexstar, you should be starting to post your resume. If this merger goes through, it's going to be thousands of jobs. But ultimately, again, it's the local communities that get hurt because of the lack of news diversity.
And that's just a brief look at a 2-hour hearing held on February 10th in Russell Senate Office Building, room 253, convened by the Senate Commerce Committee to look at the 39% national television ownership reach cap. Senators have until February 17th, if they are on the committee, to submit questions. And Mr. Ruddy, I'm sure, will have good answers, as will Mr. Legit and the 2 others on this panel. Thomas Johnson, partner and co-chair of Issues and Appeals at Wiley Ryan LLP and a former FCC general counsel, and the president of Rebuild Local News, Steve Walden. 4 witnesses have until the close of business on March 3rd to respond to the Senate Commerce Committee. This InFOCUS video podcast is presented by .fm, streaming social podcast to broadcast. Get a .fm domain name by heading over to get.fm today. The National Association of Broadcasters, of course, has advocated for the outright elimination of local broadcast television ownership caps that were codified in 2004 in omnibus legislation, and that set the cap at 39%. Should the cap be changed? Hey friends, I'm back, and this is the InFOCUS video podcast presented by the Radio and Television Business Report. Hey, look behind me. That is the National Association of Broadcasters headquarters in Southeast Washington, D.C., a neighborhood that didn't even exist when I was a student at American University more than 30 years ago. We're steps away from Nationals Park. And well, what goes on inside here? We know so much about the NAB. What exactly does it look like in this facility, which is new to me? I'm very familiar with their old building. Let's take a peek inside and get an exclusive look at just what's going on in the NAB. For decades, the National Association of Broadcasters called this 7-story structure, which was instantly distinguishable to passerby in Northwest Washington, D.C.'s DuPont Circle neighborhood, its home. In January of 2018, it traded quick walks to the Mad Hatter and Shake Shack for improved access to Washington Nationals home games in a bustling new part of the city. And, well, the NAB certainly did well with the sale of its old home, as we reported in January 2018 at RBR.com. The broadcast media industry's top lobbying advocacy group pocketed $31.6 million, or nearly $534 per square foot, from the sale of its former headquarters. Its new headquarters is sparkling, and it is just steps away from the Navy Yard metro station. Well, what does it look like inside? We got an exclusive look. Let's start on the 10th floor lobby. This is the 10th floor lobby of the NAB headquarters, and behind me is a large conference room where they have all sorts of events, including the NAB board members' meetings and NAB Leadership Foundation events. But that's what greets people when you first come in. And then they have the conference rooms, and look at this. This is like happy hour central, and if I went a little further toward that window, it's such a clear day, you can see National Cathedral from here. So really, really nice facilities here at the NAB headquarters. I'm going to do my best not to get glare and an image of myself in here, but this is an interactive wall when you come into the lobby on the left of what we just saw, and it's kind of great. These are Hall of Fame inductees, and you can just go up and touch on one. Let's go to Vin Scully, because why not? Yeah, it's pretty neat. And you can watch the video. Technology at its finest. And we are on another floor of the NAB headquarters, and yes, this is the technology lab. If you have read our Winter 2026 Radio and Television Business Report digital magazine, well, you'll know a little bit about Broadcast Positioning System Technology, BPS, and Sam Matheny is the man who is leading this. We featured him in our magazine, and this is where all the magic happens. The NAB Technology Lab not only has a test radio station, if you will, to measure equipment and make sure that broadcaster is doing what it can best to provide AM and FM signals to consumers, but it is also the hub of the Broadcast Positioning System BPS technology build-out, and that is under the direction of Sam Matheny. This is one of the racks that we saw inside the technology lab, where we also had an opportunity to speak with Michael Kacharesian. He is the VP of Media Production at the NAB, and he took us down to an amazing recording studio for broadcast TV production. And well, let's take a look at that right now. All right, let's take a look. First of all, we have a control room here.
Yeah, come on in.
Let's take a look inside the control room, Mike.
Yes. So this
is quite a studio.
Yeah, so the cool thing about what NAB has done is we built this for a couple different purposes. Number one, to show people what can be done for a broadcast studio in a smaller space. I think that's one of the keys to a lot of places. A lot of places don't want 100 by 100 foot studios, 50 by 50 foot studios. They, have smaller spaces and want to build a studio that can still look like a large broadcast quality, production, but not spend as much money. So that's what we've done here. all of the equipment in here are what broadcasters are currently using. So it's a great demo space for people who come to the NAB, but also it's great for us too, because we can produce content not only for the NAB, but also for any clients who, around DC and, around the country actually, who want to come here and produce things. The cool thing about what we've done here is we've created a studio where people can come here to create content, but we can also bring in people from around the country and around the world as guests for the different shows that are out here that people produce. So in here, we sort of built this so that a small crew could run the entire thing. You've got lighting over here, controls for our video wall over here, and then audio and the switching. But really, when in most cases, a studio like this would need 5 to 8 people to run a show. We can do it with 2 to 3. Sometimes even one person can run the entire thing, depending on the type of show it is. So it's really great. And I can take you inside to kind of show you some of the cool things that we've got in there. But, but we really like that the control room is able to be controlled by just a few people. It's really nice.
Cool. Let's go inside.
Yeah. A 28-foot curved video wall. And for any engineering or video geeks out there, it's got 1.8 millimeter pixel pitch, which means when we shoot this with our studio cameras, it just looks like a flat wall. You don't see the pixels, you don't see a lot of, the tiny imagery and stuff. So it really looks great. And what we can do is, instead of being locked into having one type of set, we can change the set for every production, and sometimes even change sets during the production. So it's really amazing. We also have this that they built for us, which is what we call our flag wall, where we can stretch an image across all of these screens or put something into each individual screen. So it really gives a lot of different options in this room for what we can do. Also, when I talk to you about some of the technology, different companies and partner companies work with us to put their technology in the room, one of which is all the LED lighting in here. And like we talked about earlier, this is a smaller studio with a smaller ceiling height. The ceiling is not as tall as what other studios that I've worked in the past have been. So it's really amazing what's been done here. In fact, the lighting designer for the CBS Evening News designed the lighting package for this. So they were able to come up with a lighting design using all of these LED fixtures to still give us broadcast quality lighting, even though we are in a smaller space. The great thing about the LED lighting is there's no heat, so we could leave these on all day and it doesn't crank up the heat in here. Also, what's really neat is the lighting is tied to the video wall. So as we change cues on the video wall, lighting can change in here based on what the type of show is. And then around here we've got robotic cameras. At the moment, we're sort of set up for something that we're doing later today, so it's not in our normal configuration. But robotic cameras, we've got a teleprompter that actually is voice controlled. So you can have somebody operate it, but you can also have somebody just speak and it will follow along based on what people are saying. So that's pretty great too.
And remind our viewers what this is mainly used for. Is it PSAs? Is it congressional action campaigns?
A little bit of everything. So we produce everything in here in terms of things that the NAB needs. And that includes, interviews, messages from our CEO. Sometimes we'll do live webcasts in here for our members. Sometimes members of Congress will come in here to do PSAs. So we do that, every 2 years. And, pretty much anything that you could think of that the NAB needs, we can produce that in here. But then a lot of clients come in, clients out from outside of the broadcast industry come and use this for the exact type things, for interviews, for webcasts, sometimes to do media tours. Different companies want to promote different things. And I think one of the reasons that they love doing that is because you could have a host here in the studio, but guests from around the country, and we can bring them in and put them on the wall. So really, because this is produced by broadcasters, we can do any type of production, which is fantastic.
Great.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mike Kacharesian at the NAB put the wall in motion and showed us just a little bit of some of the work they did on election night in 2022, as seen here for the state of North Carolina. Oh, and one last thing before we conclude our tour of the NAB headquarters in Washington, D.C. That is an Emmy that was awarded to the National Association of Broadcasters in October of 2023. It is the Philo T. Farnsworth Corporate Achievement Award, and it was presented to the National Association of Broadcasters by the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences at the 75th Engineering, Science, and Technology Emmy Awards in Los Angeles. This award recognizes the NAB's centennial anniversary as the voice of America's broadcasters, working to advance their interests through public policy, advocacy, educational initiatives, and support for content and technology innovation. And it is proudly on display inside the NAB Technology Lab at its headquarters in Washington, D.C.
Want to stand out online? Get your .fm domain. Perfect for streaming your music, building your social community, hosting your podcast, or broadcasting your brand. .fm. It's your online destination. Get yours today at www.get.fm.
And we thank .fm for their presentation of the Radio and Television Business Report InFOCUS video podcast. .fm, streaming social podcast or broadcast. Get a .fm domain name by heading over to get.fm today. And I'm outside of the cold, inside Studio B, if you will, here in Washington. And it's been such a pleasure to visit the NAB, to get up to Capitol Hill to cover a very important hearing, and we'll see how things go. And be sure to follow us and like and subscribe on YouTube. And if you're one of the hundreds of broadcasters that are heading here to Washington, D.C. next month for the NAB's annual State Leadership Conference, well, consider this a nice little preview. We'll see you next time. Take care.